Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Fellows 2016 launch webinar. My name is Shoaib Sufi. I'm the community lead at the Software Sustainability Institute. So I'm just going to go through some practicalities. I've got my screen share on, so you should be able to see the slides as I go through them. Any problems, please raise them in the question area or the chat box, which is towards the bottom of the GoWebinar panel if you're using the desktop app. Yeah, again, please put your questions in. I will answer them as I go along, or if I feel it's better for somebody else, one of the fellows who will be joining us, who's with us now, then I will redirect it to them. We might save them for the end. In the Q&A, I'll remind people if you've got a longer question and you'd like audio, then I will just raise your hand, use the panel to raise your hand. So we will be recording this webinar and it will be available shortly after, maybe on Monday or Tuesday next week on the Fellows page, so you can have a recap or you can send it around to others. Okay, so what's the aim of this webinar? Well, the aim of the webinar is really to introduce the Software Sustainability Institute for those who are not familiar with the Institute. I'll give it a brief overview. And also to really share with you aspects of the fellowship program, very briefly covering things that this year's fellows that we already have in 2015, and our thoughts and hopes for the Fellow 2016 program and what we're looking for and why we run the program. Then after that, we have a number of fellows with us who will be talking about their experiences of applying for the fellowship and what benefits they've gained from being a fellow. We'll also be available to answer your questions and clarify anything that's unclear. Okay, so the agenda for today, 3 p.m. to 3:05 is very much a setup and welcome from me. Shortly, I'll be moving on to the introduction to the Software Sustainability Institute. Then I'll talk a little bit about the Fellows Program. About 3:25, we have a number of fellows with us, Sarah Mount, Alys Brett and Natalie Stanford. And they'll be talking about their experiences. Then about 10 to we'll have a kind of panel Q&A with the fellows available. If they can stay a little bit longer, that's fine. If not, I'll be available for another 15 minutes afterwards for any kind of wrap up, any further questions that people might have. Okay, without further ado, I will go on to the introduction to the Software Sustainability Institute. I think as many people know who are on this call and maybe watching this, the software is pervasive in research. Up until recently, there was not many figures as to how pervasive, whether it's genomics or climate modeling or city modeling or marking up texts. The software is used in many different domains by many different researchers. In fact, it's really is very mainstream, even though it's not so spoken about. We did a survey last year, the year before, where we wanted to know, just get some rough figures for how important software was. So it turned out that 92% of the respondents used software. In the selection of 15 Russell Group University researchers that we contacted, and nearly 70% said their research would be impossible without software. So software is definitely increasing in its importance. Okay, so what's the role of the Software Sustainability Institute? Well, with all this software around, EPSRC and BBSRC and ESRC now they are supporting the Software Sustainability Institute as a national facility for improving research software, because we believe that better software enables better research. So sometimes software development reaches boundaries in its development where help is needed. Not so much in the core algorithms, but help in how the project is structured, how other people are interacting with the project, help in the promotion of the project, help in moving it to a different platform, helping with a testing strategy, helping with different aspects of the software. We really help to kind of move projects to the next level so they can grow. So we also offer quite a lot of expertise and advice. We also have events. We have programs like this, the fellowship program. We do policy research to understand the effect of software in research and best practices in software in research. So we are really set up to help improve the lot of software in research, and that includes things like promoting reproducible research and career paths, and making sure people get credit for work that they've done to help the research process. So how are we structured? Well, we're structured into a number of themes. Our software theme, which is very much us walking the talk and actually getting involved with projects to help them with sustainability, whether it's community or testing or scaling. We're very much involved in training. So we're involved in this software carpentry, which I'll talk about later shortly. And we're involved with interacting with the CDTs. These are the Centres for Doctoral Training, to help really harmonise and improve their offerings of training, of computational training anyway, to their students. We also, as I mentioned previously, we have a policy department which looks at really trying to understand the community, understand research software. And we have the community program, which I lead, which is very much focused on our events program, where we focus on specific events, whether it's software licensing, whether it's credit, or other aspects, and bringing people together to talk about those issues, or whether it's networking events. Kind of combining all of these is our outreach platform. As you know, our kind of www.software.ac.uk, which is quite a popular website now, getting between 15 and 20,000 unique hits a month. So things they are we refer to quite heavily. Funny anecdotal story about SourceForge. The best guide to moving projects onto SourceForge was written by us, so much so that when SourceForge changed, they wanted us to update our guide because it seemed to be the most referenced one. So I'm not saying that's a be-all and end-all, but it's just a sign that we are quite referenced. We work with lots of different groups, whether it's through open call projects, improving their software, whether it's through consultancy, whether it's doing particular events. So we have quite a broad reach, especially nationally, as well as having international connections. Okay, well, let's move on to the fellowship program itself. So I'll speak a little bit about the program this year, just some highlights or some information really about the program this year. So in December, actually that's wrong, in December 14, we announced our fellows for 2015. Now fellows run from January through to March of the next year. So we had quite a large number of fellows last year. There were some really good people. So we tend to get a good number. We're quite focused on gender. We're quite sensitive to gender matters. So we're quite happy that we got a good number of female fellows. In fact, all the fellows we'll be speaking today are female, which I think is fantastic. In terms of career stage, we have a number of early career fellows, some late, and a lot of people in the middle. I'll talk a little bit about. This shouldn't really put you off, though, if you're an early careerer, because this can change and has changed from year to year. We manage all our interactions with the fellows. In terms of the fellows' areas, they come from a variety of different areas. This year, we've had a lot of people in the bio area and the computing area. In other years, we'd have a lot of people from Earth systems. So this, again, is not an indication of what we're looking for, but it's an indication of who we got, as it were, this year. And the other thing, it shows the spread of who we're working with. We're not just working with science, although science is traditionally a big user of computation, but also working with humanities and social science and even art. So this gives you a broad spread of the people that we're working with. One thing that we do, as you might have seen in the advertising for the fellowship program, is that we offer support in exchange for people's expertise and advice. Now, expertise can be us asking the fellows questions. If they're in a particular area, we might ask them, the impact of a particular piece of software, or what the core problems are, or get involved with them. But they also, the other thing that they do is they, once they've attended an event, because we support them attending events, once they've attended an event, or they've run a workshop, or they've done some other type of event, they write that up as a blog post. So this was new for 2015, because we used to ask them to write a conference report. The conference report's quite tedious and long, but these are quite punchy, short articles, and they tend to get 10 times the number of views. So we really go for impact over detail in a sense, trying to tease out the main issues when people have been to events, and they also tend to be more enjoyable to write. Some of our more popular blogs can get up to 300 or 400 unique hits a day. So they are something that people like to write, and they're certainly something that improves your name and standing. And as well as events, as well as attending conferences or attending workshops or even running workshops, one of the other aspects that the fellows are quite strongly involved with is the software carpentry movement, and this overlaps with our training theme. So software carpentry is an international initiative that helps to promote the teaching of the basic skills of computational research. And fellows are involved as helpers, or some are even involved as instructors. You can see in the bottom right there's a number of events there that have involved fellows, and up and coming events are handled by fellows. So when if you want to run a software carpentry type event, it tends to either be for a particular institution or a particular domain, or there's a particular techniques or tools that you're interested in, and these very much, I'm not saying it's not a must, but these are often people make a case for fellowship, that one of the things that they want to do is run a software carpentry event, and they identify a kind of a unique target market for that, something you might want to think about. Fellows do run other workshops as well, like promoting software sustainability, with James Baker from formerly British Library, now University of Sussex, is doing a programming historian course where he'll be teaching historians tools to help them improve their computational skills. One of the things that the fellows really like is our annual collaborations workshop. Now, this is a big networking ideas festival, coding hackathon. It's we had nearly 100 people last year, and it seems to grow year on year. In addition, we have fellows coming back from previous years, 2-3 years previously, because they really do enjoy the event, and it's a way to accelerate their networking and really understand what the heartbeat of software tools, techniques are in research software. One of the nice stories from this year was that one of our fellows, Robin Wilson from Southampton, he and his team produced a piece of software called Recipe, which is a way of tracking provenance in command line tools in Python. And he won one of the best talk awards at the recent Euro SciPy conference. And he was also mentioned in the official Python newsletter. So our fellows do go on to doing some really interesting things, and we help. We're happy to help support them and promote what they do. Slightly cutesy slide here. So we follow this policy of kind of fellows forever. So once you become a fellow, you come into your inauguration year. Once you're in your inauguration year, after your inauguration year, what happens? Well, we don't say bye-bye unless you don't want to really interact anymore. You stay on as a continuing fellow, and being a continuing fellow gives you access to a communal pot of money as opposed to your own pot of money, and the networking opportunities and that you've had in the we're asking you for advice, and you can ask us for advice. So it really is a win-win, and we have a lot of the fellows from previous years still interacting with us and coming to events and having ideas. So it's not a must, but it seems to be something that people are interested in. And the other thing that we'll have, and the same for Fellows 2016, will be an inaugural meeting, which happens after the Fellows for 2016 are announced. It happens in January, and it'll be a time where you can meet the other Fellows. You can get introduced to the themes of the SSI, what the SSI is about, understand how to interact with the SSI, perhaps even find one of the things that you'll put together in your application, and if you're shortlisted, you'll talk to us about is your plan as a fellow. And that's really quite important. What will you do if you're a fellow? And this can change once you are a fellow, although it tends to it tends to be the same level of it tends to change for the good as opposed to not happening, as it were. But this gives you another time to get your plan appraised, but this time not to be judged, as it were, for fellowship, but just to get it appraised by another set of like-minded people. And fellows have found this really quite useful. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the fellowship program 2016 going forward. So why fellows? Again, I've covered some of this, but the Institute, its mantra is about better software through better research. We're not going to know what software is important, what's happening in a particular domain, unless we have people in those domains who are helping us. And if we can support like-minded people who are sometimes can feel quite lonely in their domain as the only one talking about software or promoting software, then that is really quite useful for the fellow and also useful for us. And it's useful for people at different career stages. It's not just for those that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So when we say career stages, what do we mean? Well, we're looking for people in different career stages, and it starts from PhD onwards. So early career stage would be PhD students, even if you're in your first year, and new RAs. Mid-career would be like lecturers, established RAs, or people with fellowships, and late career would be like senior RAs and research fellows and senior lecturers, readers, professors, and we do have one professor who is a fellow. And we've in recent years had more interest from more senior people. But don't let that put you off, because when people are, your career stage will be taken into account when people are reviewing your application. So it's not something that will be held against you, that you don't have 100 papers to your name or something. So we're looking for people across the RC UK strategic areas. Yeah, we've got specific funding from the EPSRC actually and the BBSRC, and ESRC. So we're particularly happy, we'd like to invite particular application for people in those research areas, but we're open to people from all research areas. Yes, you have to have some kind of specific interest in research, in research software. Do you use it? Do you promote it? Have you got ideas around how it should be in your domain? Have you been involved in standards, etc.? You need to determine how we could help. We're looking for people who are good kind of science communicators, or could not so much to the general public, but communication with people who are in different domains, and you can talk to other researchers and talk to people in the research space, and again, people who are contributing towards research. One of the most important things I'd like to say is that you've got time to engage. There's no point in you winning this fellowship and then suddenly deciding, yeah, I won the fellowship, but I've got no time whatsoever to engage. If you've got no time to engage, we will be running this fellowship again next year. So if you're just starting as a new lecturer, or just in your first year of a PhD and just finding your feet, then perhaps it isn't for you. But if you want to and you think you've got the time, then that's fine. But yeah, we'd say approximately 8 days in the year it would take. I mean, that's attending events and doing things, but hopefully all of those will be a kind of win-win, in the sense that you're not doing things which don't forward your own agenda as well. So in terms of what we expect, so we're expecting people to travel to conferences, gathering intelligence, attend their collaborations workshop, maybe organize a software carpentry style event for those who are a bit more mid-senior, help maybe SSI with review, or run your own style of workshop, either based on software carpentry or based on something else. For example, we've had people have workshops where they give honorariums to people in their domain to come and talk about specific subjects, a very specific focus on that specific area. But there's a software overlap, or they've attached some kind of workshop on to an existing workshop that's been run in their domain, say for early career scientists. Those more later on, we really look at them to, as well as doing all the other things, to help perhaps with networking and with promoting our agenda where it overlaps with theirs. And we are open to suggestions as well. We're not just entirely focused on what we think you should do. We're really looking for your ideas. We will listen. We will be responsive. We'll deal with you as one of the team. It's not them and us, it's us. We'll support your work and ideas. We will help, if you've got an idea about something, we'll say, oh, maybe you should talk to this person, maybe you should talk to that person. And we'll be fair and flexible as well, where possible. Benefits: you get empowered to speak about software in your domain. And this is one of the main, people don't often think about the money. They think about the platform that they get, although the money's there for you if you win it. And people do use their money. You get to see what other people are doing, and you also learn as well. You get to see even people who've worked who are software developers have found out things that they should really learn. So it helps direct your own personal learning. Again, benefits: you can for early career people, you can attend more conferences, which is a big thing for early career researchers, because they don't tend to have a pot of money for travel. You can raise your profile. You can even try to give your hand perhaps at organising a workshop, and this can really help your organisational skills. The fellows in the mid-career, you perhaps give your hand at getting through software carpentry, or train the trainers to give a chance to give you some teaching experience. Informal publishing opportunities. We don't just take blog posts if you've blogged, if you've been to an event that we've paid for. But if you've been to an event that we haven't paid for, but you think it's of relevance, then you can also publish a blog post with us. Or if you've got a longer guide that's on your mind, and you think the SSI might be a good place to put a white paper on something, that's fine. And it does tend to raise your visibility within the institution. There's a number of times where fellows have become the kind of go-to person for software in their research group, or even in their department. What's happening in that space? What should we use? We're just starting a project. So it can have a local benefit as well. For senior people, it gives you an opportunity to be either a thought leader or interact with thought leaders, and even sometimes a platform to influence national policy, because we've been asked to, if we do a response to something put out by the government around data or something, we could involve some of the fellows in helping do that response. In terms of the timeline, well, today's the webinar. Thursday, the 1st of October, important date, 11 p.m. BST, applications will close. Then you'll hear on the 22nd on the shortlist. There'll be a face-to-face meeting in Manchester on the 4th. We expect you to be there from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Travel and accommodation will be paid for by the institute, so you don't have to worry if you haven't got a travel budget. Only if there's you're not available on that day for a valid reason, like I'm out of the country, or it's right in the middle of my teaching, or something else, then we might be able to. Well, what we do is we could, and we have in the past, put on sort of an online selection addendum, but the preference will be given to the people who come to this face-to-face. Friday, 27th of November, you'll find out if you've been successful, and then we'll make an official. There's some things you have to agree to, just normal things, like you'll go to certain meetings and you provide us with some information, and then we'll make an official announcement in December. Okay, so I know I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to briefly go through these questions. Now, I don't want to give too much away for those who are at this webinar and those who couldn't make this webinar. But so these are some, not all of the questions, but some of the questions. So we're very, we'd like you to describe your work. What is it that you do? Whether you're a programmer, a researcher, and how that interacts with software. And we're very interested in how you're communicating your work and your professional interests. Do you have a blog? Have you written any white papers? What are your papers? Do you have a Twitter account? If you don't have any of those things, have you given seminars? How do you communicate your work? And this one about provide evidence of your standing and engagement with the community. Please, if you're going to put papers in, don't just put, here are 3 papers. That's it. A little bit of why they're important, what they're about. Even if it's about your research area, something that probably a lay technical person could understand. And if you've not written papers, then how else have you engaged with the community? Another important question is, what are your thoughts on sustaining research software? What do you think about software sustainability? Why is it important? How should people go about doing it? This is, if you look at this question on the application form, there's quite a lot of information guiding you before you actually fill that in. And probably the most important question is, what would you do if you were awarded the fellowship? Because people are really, that's something that weighs heavily in the reviewer's mind. If this person is given a fellowship, how much return on investment is there for this fellow and for the institute? So if you've got good ideas and good plans, then they carry quite a lot of weight. You might not be the social, you might have some great plans. That's fantastic. That will go in your favor. And this other one, what problems do you see in your work where better software would help? And this is, again, we believe that's something that successful applicants should be thinking about. They should have an eye, even if their focus is their research work, let's say, and their research work isn't software. They should have an eye on software and how it could help them. They should have an interest in software and how it could help them, or even putting down things like, if I had systems that did this, that would really help me. So why does that help the reviewers? Well, that helps the reviewers because they can then better understand how the fellow would fit into the tapestry of the other fellows, and also it could help them connect the fellows with the right people. Slides will be available after the webinar, as will recordings, probably next Tuesday. So there'll be some links, but they're all available from the front of the SSI page. Okay, so I have, I believe, taken my fair share of the time. I won't take questions just now. I will move on to the first person who, first fellow who will be speaking. So I will find out where in this long list where Sarah is. Okay. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Shoaib. Hi
Hi.
there. Is this okay?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. I think others can. If anybody
Brilliant.
can't, then please say. I will just mute myself and I will let you speak.
Thanks, Shoaib. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my sort of journey into an SSI fellowship, and hopefully it's useful to some of you. I found out about the fellowship on Twitter. I forget quite when and who from, possibly from Tom Crick, who is a 2014 fellow. So I'm a computer scientist, and obviously as a computer scientist I have a lot of interest in software and who uses it and how, and I spend a lot of my life writing software for research. So the SSI has a sort of obvious intersection with my interests, and I thought very hard about applying in the previous round in 2013 for a 2014 fellowship, and didn't. And I didn't really because at that time I didn't have a very clear plan for what I would do as a fellow and how I would use the money and how I would use my sort of time on the fellowship. So looking back now that I've applied for the next year and got the fellowship, I'm actually really pleased that I delayed that, because I think had I gone in with a sort of very vague idea of what I wanted to do, I probably wouldn't have been successful. And had I been successful, I probably wouldn't have had such a useful experience as an SSI fellow. So my plan for the fellowship this year is to do two things. One is to host a software carpentry workshop, and the other is to run a track for scientists and people using software for their research at PyCon UK, which is a Python community conference. So it's not an academic conference, it's really a conference for people who are sort of using Python in their day-to-day life, which might be in industry, but it might be just as a hobby or in education. So that's a sort of conference with a very different feel to an academic conference, and one where the people coming to our track can maybe mix with people who are professional software engineers and get a different perspective on writing their software. Hopefully that happens next week, so we'll see how it goes. I wanted to say a little bit about software carpentry workshops, because probably quite a few people will want to think about software carpentry workshops and running them, or maybe helping out with one or attending them. So I did the software carpentry instructor training this year as part of my fellowship, and to prepare for running a workshop. And I wanted to say a few things about this. When I did the training, I'd already been teaching in higher education for a really long time, so I'd probably been teaching for about 14 or 15 years. So I had a lot of experience as a teacher, and I also had a teaching qualification, which was kind of compulsory in the institutions I worked for. So I wasn't really sure when I went into this what to expect from the instructor training. And I think if you do a lot of teaching yourself and you've had to do some training, and maybe you've done a PG cert or something like me, you probably know that the quality of teacher training for people in HEIs is really variable at best. So I sort of went into the software carpentry instructor training with a little bit of trepidation perhaps about what it might be like and what it might entail. But it's worth knowing this, because if you haven't got the instructor's training certificate and you want to run a workshop or help with one, you do need to do the instructor training. It's compulsory. So what I found was actually the training was excellent, and it was really useful. It's all evidence-based, so everything you learn that instructor training is based on sort of practical research that people have done in the pedagogical world, and that makes the whole experience a much more useful one than it might otherwise be. You'll spend quite a bit of your time in instructor training doing some homework, which is always, well, it's not all reading, but there'll be a lot of reading. But you'll also do some hands-on sort of peer-to-peer teaching. So you'll get some experience of what instructor training, what software carpentry training is like, even if you haven't been to a software carpentry workshop yet. So for me, that experience was actually really positive, but I would say that it's also a very time-consuming experience. So if you think, like I probably did when I started, or maybe I can sort of fit this in on train journeys and things, it is a little bit more time-consuming than that. Also, if you use software a lot in your own research, you might already be quite familiar with the sort of things that are taught on the software carpentry syllabus, which are things like Python and using the bash shell, regular expression searching, this sort of thing. So, but if you don't, then you'll learn a lot of that stuff through the instructor training itself. So that might be useful to you as well. So that's about that. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll let the other fellow speak, is just about the selection process. So there's the form that you fill in, but there's also the selection day, the face-to-face day. And when I went into the selection day, I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I'm not going to tell you too much about what to expect. I'll leave it as a surprise. But for me, this was really good fun, and perhaps I just had a bad year that year, but that selection day was probably the most fun I've had all year. So you'll meet a very, very diverse group of people in the selection day, and in particular you'll meet people from a very diverse range of disciplines. So people that you wouldn't necessarily meet, you know, at the conferences that you would go to for your own discipline. And that makes it really interesting. And you'll also meet people with, you know, vastly different and very interesting ideas about how software should be used, how it should be built, how it should be supported by universities and so on. And it's great fun, so you will really enjoy it. So my advice to anyone going to the selection day is, don't think about whether you get selected or not. Just go in and enjoy meeting everyone, and you'll definitely get a lot out of the selection day, whether or not you're selected. Okay, so I think that's about all I've got to say about my fellowship journey. So Shoaib, maybe would you like to pass on to Alys? Or?
Yeah, excellent. Thanks very much, Sarah. Thanks very much. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity towards after the presentations for people intending to ask any questions. Okay, so let's change that. I'm going to move on to the next fellow, Alys Brett, who will be giving her presentation. Alys?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you. I'm just going to move on to your slides. Can you see your slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just let me know when you want me to go on to the next one.
Thanks. Okay, so hello, I'm Alys Brett. I'm a software engineer at a research lab in Oxfordshire called Culham Centre for Fusion Energy, or CCFE. Next slide, please. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we do there, just to give you my background. The main thing we do is research into nuclear fusion with the ultimate aim of contributing to the development of eventual nuclear fusion power stations. So we have two large tokamak devices, which are nuclear fusion experiments, and we study the behaviour of the plasma and try to understand how it can be controlled. This is very long. I mainly work on the JET experiment, which is a big European collaboration. It's operated by CCFE on behalf of the EU, and scientists from 40 different European fusion labs come over and run experiments and use the data. So there's quite a logistical exercise in getting them access to the data and things like that. And the other experiment on site is MAST, which is a smaller device, which is the UK's own experiment. So JET's been running since 1983, so that's quite a long time in terms of a scientific experiment, which gives us some particular challenges around software sustainability and managing data over that time scale. So that's one of the areas where the work of the SSI appealed to me, and I could see the overlap between our challenges and the things they're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. So my role at CCFE is that I'm team leader of a group of software engineers, and we work for and with researchers. What we do is provide quite a lot of sort of data infrastructure and also tools for scientists to use, covering the whole pipeline from raw data storage to automated processing to sort of reconstruct physical parameters from the original raw data, and then tools that let scientists access and analyze the data and do visualization and things like that. So as well as building data systems and tools, writing software from scratch, we also support and maintain software, some of which is really quite old now. And we have a role helping scientists with their software development, almost a bit of an informal consultancy role within the organisation, as well as a more recent remit we've been given to sort of promote improvements in software development practices on site. I think other people were starting to recognise these issues, that we have a lot of people who maybe come over for 2 years on a secondment from somewhere else in Europe, write some software in their favourite language and then disappear again, with not a lot of thought to who's going to take that over, and all too often whoever replaces them for the next temporary contract sort of doesn't like that language, can't understand the code, and the temptation is to start again from scratch, and you lose a lot of the value there. So because we then had this remit to try and start addressing these issues within the organisation, I was really looking around for a bit of support with that and a bit of a wider perspective from people tackling the same things in other places. So that's what originally prompted me to apply for the fellowship. Next slide, please. Okay, so talk a little bit about the application process, really just echoing what Sarah said. So yes, you don't know what to expect going along to a selection day, but I'd really say that it didn't feel like an interview. It felt more like a workshop, or so something that was a useful event in its own right, really. So I guess that was my first taste of the SSI's innovative approach to organising events. So yeah, I would really say it was worth doing, even if you weren't successful in that. I think there's people I met there that I would have stayed in contact with and had useful collaborations with in the future, whichever way it had gone. And I was particularly struck by the sort of diversity and the great bunch of people who had, a whole lot of different perspectives, but really shared this sort of common instinct for the kind of things that would improve the situation with research software. So that was really very interesting, and it felt a bit like finding this group that was kind of your proper place, I suppose, or a lot of people recognised like-minded people and found it a relief to be able to discuss things without being maybe the only defender of some kind of idea that just seems obviously right to you. Next slide, please. And so then the collaborations workshop in March in Oxford was a really great event. Just a few of the, sorry for the dodgy photos from my phone of the slides, a few of the things that give you a flavour of the kind of event it is. So I think they call it an unconference. So the overall theme is that everybody's really participating all the time, and there's a lot of discussion, so you don't spend a lot of time sitting at the back falling asleep in talks. You're really part of things the whole time, and they really pack such a lot of ideas and discussions into a short time. I came away with, well, loads of useful conversations, but sort of two more concrete potential collaborations, which I followed up later, and I'll talk about that in the coming slides. So next slide, please. So now on to what I'm actually doing during my fellowship. So it's good that I'm following on from Sarah's talk, because one of the activities I'm doing is speaking in the science track of PyCon UK, which is Sarah's fellowship activity. So not being really an academic myself, I'm employed by the Institute as a software developer, so I don't generally sort of publish papers and go to scientific conferences, so it's a really good opportunity for me to speak at a conference. I'm going to be doing a demo of some software we've written recently and sort of talking about the approach we've been using microservices to let scientists give people access to their data, and showing how easily that can be done with some modern Python tools. So I'm really looking forward to that, and to hearing all the rest of the speakers in the science track and elsewhere. Next slide, please. So the couple of collaborations that arose from the collaboration meeting, in fact, I had an idea going into the fellowship in my plan that I'd like to make contacts and start some sharing of ideas between some of the other large science facilities that are in our area of Oxfordshire. There's a big site very nearby, Harwell site, where there's the diamond experiment and lots of other things. And one particular contact I made was one of last year's fellows called Mark Basham, who has a fairly similar role to mine, but at the diamond facility. So that was really interesting. We did a lot of talking in the coffee breaks, comparing notes, and we've had some interaction since. He's been over to give a talk to our Python user group, and his activity in his fellowship was starting a Python community of practice amongst the different organisations over on his site. And there's a plan going forward that we'll collaborate there and perhaps host some joint events and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that. There was also a lot of just comparing notes about how we run things, our infrastructure for software development, how we do our version control and continuous integration, and we're even putting our sort of relevant system administrators in contact with each other to try and, you know, learn from the best of both worlds. And the other collaboration that started this year is a new network for leaders of research software engineering groups, which is something the SSI has been really involved in trying to promote. There's a big network of research software engineers who are trying to get this recognised as a really sort of distinct kind of role in academia in its own right, and thinking about ideas around recognition of people for writing software as well as just for publishing papers in an academic career. So this is a little offshoot really from that, which is a special network for people who are either trying to set up groups or already running groups to share some best practices and resources and things like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops. Next slide, please. And the other activity that I'm doing at the moment is trying to organise a software carpentry workshop, as Shoaib mentioned, and we're looking to hopefully hold that in November if the trainers can be found. So looking at the software carpentry syllabus, a lot of it fits in really well with the things that our researchers need to know about. Python's really taken off on site, so the general programming introduction would be in Python, and we've adopted Git and GitLab, which is a sort of internal equivalent of GitHub. So I'm looking at adapting the software carpentry lesson that uses GitHub to use our system GitLab instead, and then contributing that back for anybody else who uses GitLab. And finally, the Linux command line to help scientists who are doing programming and trying to automate tasks and things like that on our Linux analysis clusters. And if that's successful and people like it, then I'm hoping that maybe we can, either myself or somebody else in my group might train as an instructor so that we can run courses under our own steam in the future. And also thinking about what might be good follow-up for people who've attended a software carpentry course. So could they have some kind of informal study group could you have a group of people who are going to follow some kind of more advanced online course together and support each other through that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in summary, I was trying to think of the benefits and downsides, and as you can see, I thought of a lot more benefits. It's been so valuable as a really brilliant source of ideas. I follow a lot of the other fellows and other people on Twitter, and there are mailing lists and things, so you get this constant flow of suggestions, ideas, things people are thinking about in their own institutions that sort of set off ideas for what you could do. People talking about new tools and technologies they're trying. It's really great to meet all these like-minded people, and it gives you a feeling of sort of fitting into a bigger picture when you're tackling some of these challenges. Yeah, there's such a lot of people saying, oh, I thought we were the only ones who had that issue, and actually finding it's really common. So yeah, there's a lot of support out there, sort of mutual support, and having people to talk to about things, and great opportunities to get involved in initiatives and speaking at events and organising things that you wouldn't otherwise. Which brings me on to the only downside I could actually think of, which is the lack of time to get involved in all of the interesting stuff that I'd like to. So I'm hoping to be able to make up for that in the coming years as a continuing fellow and continuing to be involved, because it's been an incredibly busy year this year, but very enjoyable. So if you decide to apply, very good luck with your applications. And that's me finished.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alice. Next up we have Natalie Stanford. Natalie, you there?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Great. Okay, so I don't have any slides, and I'm going to keep it fairly brief because I think we're already coming to the end of the hour before questions. So from my side, I'm more on the bioscience side of things. I work in an area called systems biology, and it's an area where there's lots of exchange of data between different people from different disciplines, because it's an interdisciplinary subject. And part of the things that happens when you exchange a lot of data between people is it needs to be in a format where you can exchange it easily. And standards for structuring your data, standards for how to describe your data are very important to make sure that the data can be passed along, reused, and then the study at the end of it's valid. So from my perspective, I've been working in a group that was helping build standards in the community, was trying to implement standards where possible, but it was and still is a fairly niche activity, although it's growing in its usage. So I wanted to join a community so I could see what was happening in other areas, whether the challenges we were facing with having uptake of standards was similar in different disciplines, and also whether there was any way I could do work with the community to make it more usable by people. So my idea fundamentally was to get people together where we could try and streamline some of the resources and make them more user-friendly. Obviously that's not something you can achieve in a year, but it's something you can start setting the foundations for. So I'd applied because I wanted to try and improve the area that I work in, and also, find out what directions we as a community could be moving in, just to feedback at conferences. And I found that the Software Sustainability Institute was very useful for that, because I discovered, for instance, the physics community is significantly more advanced than the biology community in that respect, whereas I also found out that the humanities communities are a bit further behind than the biology community in that respect. So I got to see this trajectory that lots of different subject areas are, crawling along. And I found that immensely useful. Obviously, the pot of money you have to attend conferences and things is quite useful, but for me, it was actually, I haven't used much of the money. I've used more of the knowledge and the connections in my year, and I've been able to improve my work myself a lot more as well. The selection day that we had So once I'd sent my application and actually gone to the selection day itself was a hugely valuable experience. So even if you didn't get selected, you can make contacts on the selection day. The activities you do in the selection day is hugely interesting. It's like a conference in itself for the day. I'd have actually gone home quite happy having just been to the selection day, I think. Moment with my project, we're on a small delay with actually implementing it, but the advantage of that is I'm still going to be a fellow next year as part of the alumni, if you will. So I still have the network, I still have the people to work with. So I think for me, it's only been a positive experience. Yeah, so I think I'll keep mine as that, given the time. And then if there's any questions for me to elaborate on, obviously I will.
Sorry, I just realised I've been muted. Right, let me start again. Very sorry. One of the other fellows were there trying to say, "Are you speaking?" Right. Okay. So the question is, how does a communal pot work? Well, it runs from January through till December. It's first come, first served. A little bit more stricter on the win-win for the institute than when they have their own pot of cash, but it tends to be, number one, underspent. Number two, I've not known one event that we've said no to yet. So yeah, it's available. There's another question here for me. If I understood right, don't need to apply with a project in to build or design like a new tool, but more activities. And would designing a tool be inappropriate? Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the fellowship doesn't cover, a couple of the things that the fellowship doesn't cover is staff time or hardware. In very rare circumstances, we've supported the purchase of software, but it's tended to be linked to an activity in terms of producing a set of resources. But yeah, the fellowship is more about attending conferences, attending workshops, running workshops, or running some other kind of event which helps, or bringing people together for a particular research question, let's say, or a particular question that really helps move forward the general lot of research software. If you're more focused on you've got a piece of software and you want to know how to take it further, then I would direct you towards the open call. The open call is a call by the SSI where people put in applications, and they want time from the SSI to help them improve software. So that's really the more situation. I can hear things being typed furiously by the fellows as they're unmuted. Okay, next question. How competitive is the selection process? How many applicants to the fellows are there? one year we had 120 applicants for 15 places, and then it dropped down to about 70 applicants for 15 places. And I'd say the quality improved. The number of applicants coming down was caused by the very difficult question: what would you do if you were a fellow? So that's the thing. So yeah, so 70 were selected last year. 26 made it to shortlist, and then we chose 19. So the odds are pretty good. So are there any limits on what the fellowship funding is used for? Okay, so we've covered that one. It sounds like software carpentries are quite professionally focused. Are there any constraints on potential audiences for organising workshops, e.g. organising one for undergraduate scientists in training? I don't. A lot of these questions seem to be for me, so I'm saying sorry to the fellows if they're hearing my voice too much. I don't think we'd be against that as an experiment, because there was some talk at doing this at another university. But if it happened, there's some constraints around software carpentry workshops in terms of if you want to badge it as a software carpentry workshop and you're covering a particular syllabus and you want to advertise it in that way, there's a certain fee that you have to pay to help support the international software carpentry movement, as it were, and the coordination and the help, the whole thing that they run. But if you wanted to run a software carpentry style workshop or inspired workshop, or you didn't want to call it software carpentry, there's nothing stopping you from using the material, which is all free. Okay, a question from Craig Anslow. Hi there. If hosting a workshop does not have to happen in the UK, if hosting a workshop, does it have to happen in the UK? It doesn't have to happen in the UK, but you have to show how it helps UK researchers, because the SSI is a UK-funded institute. We have to show how we're helping UK research. So if, for example, we were supporting an American piece of software which was used heavily in the UK, that would be okay. So you have to show how. Are collaboration networking opportunities intended to be UK only, or can you reach networks internationally? I'm going to ask one of the fellows this. Sarah, can you answer that question from your experience of being to SSI events?
Sorry, Shoaib. Can you repeat the question?
So the questions are collaboration / networking activities intended to be UK only, or can you reach networks internationally?
I can't think of a good reason why you couldn't reach an international network. I mean, certainly in terms of the things I'm doing, we have, in terms of the sort of things like the PyCon UK track, we have people from all over the world coming to that. I mean, obviously it's a UK event, so it's mainly UK people, but it does have a further reach. So sure, I don't see why not.
Alys, your experience of this? Alys, are you there? Maybe she's not there. Oh, muted. I muted you. Okay. All right, Alys, I think you've muted yourself. Okay, no problem then. I've seen there's more questions coming in. We'll go on to the next one.
I can unmute myself, I see. So yeah, there certainly have been international elements to the networking, I think. Off the top of my head, I think there were people at the collaborations workshop from other places, certainly, and people are so mobile in the research community anyway that people who started off UK-based have moved abroad while I've been doing the fellowship. Another thing I've been asked to do is reviewing papers for a conference which is happening in America, so that's bringing in an international element off the top of my head. And of course our scientists who are involved in things we do within our organisation are a European bunch, so certainly it's benefiting UK research, but there's no exclusion of international people.
Excellent. Natalie?
For me, I think the work that I've been doing is quite international anyway. The network that I work with is international, and the people I've been writing grants with to support further work of what I've been doing are from Germany. So I don't see any reason why being international would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, from the SI's perspective, we like to, it's, in terms of collaboration and networking, we like to help support that internationally. Okay, next one. Will SSI help publicize your event? Yes, SSI will help publicize your event. You can write a blog post about your event. You can write a page which points to your registration page about the event. There's a weekly newsletter that goes out to our registered people who've registered with the SSI. It's about 500 people. That'll go out to them. And if we do a news item, that'll go out to Twitter, which is about nearly 3,000 people. So yes, we will. Would developing in-house software to wrap proprietary analysis programs be an acceptable project area, or does the software need to be fully open access? So I can't say this enough. The fellowship is nothing to do with supporting writing software directly. So it's about workshops, it's about conferences, it's about training. In this case, if you said, well, I've got this piece of software, I don't know what to do with it. I'm going to organize a workshop that brings developers from different places to decide what's the best way to include this in our workflow. Will you pay travel costs and catering? We'd say, yes. You have to write a blog post about what happened and what you came up with, but yes. But will it pay for a person's time to sit there and do this? No. Will it help you? Will we guarantee to help give you people to do this? No. Then you have to go to the open call for projects. I'll add a point in the slides about the open call when I put that up. Okay. For academics who are fellows, has there been any direct academic output benefits from the fellowship beyond community activities? Right, I will ask Sarah this one.
It's a good question. I think for me, probably not directly, but indirectly, certainly. I mean, it's always useful, if you're a computer scientist particularly, it's always useful to talk to people who write software and to talk to people who use software, because computer scientists can often get very can lose touch with which research questions are actually going to have an impact on people and which aren't. So that's quite useful. But also it's useful in the sense to talk to people who are very active in different areas of research about how they write their software and what sort of workflow they use and what they found to be useful for getting other people to collaborate on software and that sort of thing. So I mean, at the moment it seems that almost everybody uses GitHub, and if you use GitHub, it's easy to persuade other people to collaborate with you because they're already on there. And that's probably not a great revelation in itself, but just being in sort of rooms full of people who write software all the time is just a useful thing. So in that sort of indirect sense, I think it's helped my academic work, but not directly, exactly.
Natalie? Natalie?
Sorry, I was muted.
So
what was the question?
The question was for academics who are fellows. Has there been any direct academic output / benefit from the fellowship beyond community activities?
I think that probably depends on what your career level is. I mean, and also what you class as academic output. It's quite nice to have it on your CV, I suppose, to show you're active in different communities other than the one you have to interact with. And we're in the process of preparing a paper with some of the things we found out during the year where I was working on the fellowship that I don't think we would have found out had I not been part of the SSI. So I suppose it depends on where you're drawing the line between academic and just networking.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from other fellows that they've been given academic opportunities. It's helped them with job applications, for example, or it's helped them keep their post, for example, or it's helped them improve their tools and techniques, so that they know what to do, so they can make them research more efficient, as it were. Okay, the next question. In the example, organising the workshop, the money limit is to the one with the fellowship, or are there other possibilities? Funding, venue, SSI offers? Yeah, I mean, SSI, the thing about the SSI network of fellows is you can, as a fellow, you can ask the other fellows, do you have any rooms available in your institution? We put it out to the fellows, and often they will have ways in which fellows can help other fellows, or if you want to run something in Manchester or one of our institutes where the SSI is based, we'll try and accommodate you. So yeah, I mean, we do try and help in other ways in terms of connecting people and venues as well, and we're open to people's ideas as well. Could you help us in this way? Yeah. Any other questions? Well, we're coming up to 1:15 now. I don't think any more questions. I can't see any more questions waiting. I see somebody has their hand up. I will unmute that person. Shahla Gobadi. Let me unmute Shahla. Shahla, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I wanted to know, does the Institute help fellows in connecting to software companies that they have made the software that I'm basically using, but I need some new functionalities and I want to give them ideas? Or does the Institute help in creating those connections or collaborations?
Generally, we're about open software and open science, but if the fellow can make a case for why this is important for their research area, then in terms of paying for travel costs and paying for people to get together, and helping support you as rather a lone researcher, but kind of saying, well, we support this person as one of our fellows, we think you should listen to them, seeing if we've got other connections there, then we'd be able to help in that way. But generally, you'd have to make a pretty good case as to why you'd want to go down the proprietary route. We're not anti-proprietary, but we tend towards open source and open science.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I'm seeing if there's any other hands up. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, there don't appear to be any other questions. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to attend the launch webinar. I'd especially like to thank the fellows who've made time from their busy schedules and even holiday to join us with their inputs. The slides will be available on the SSI website soon, either today, or if not today, then it'll be Tuesday, and we'll make a video of the webinar available. So thanks everyone for attending, and I will look forward to your applications. All the best. Bye-bye.